Last time many of you were on a call together, we were discussing topics of emotional health, and we know that life is full of uncertainty. And obviously, I don't know about you, but I did not know that this would be week 7. You know, when I thought we were staying home, I thought it'd be a couple of weeks. I didn't know it would go so long. And I think, I guess that's a good thing, because I'm not sure if I would have been able to prepare for 7 weeks. But it is our 7th week of isolation, social distancing, staying at home, and many of you working from home. And I know many of you are also unable to work from home because you are frontline workers. And for that, we thank you. And in addition to whatever you normally do during the day, you are now also caring for children, caring for other loved ones, trying to do your job. And also being educators and filling in all the gaps, and of course our wonderful Girl Scout volunteers. So we know COVID-19 and the pandemic has really increased stress and anxiety levels in all of us, and in ways that are unprecedented and that no one could have really prepared for. We know that our communities, our leaders, our families, and our family members may be reacting in different ways. Some people are, jump to it kind of people and just get in there and getting things done. And other people may be more of, shell-shocked, or depending on circumstances, if they have loved ones who are ill, everybody's in a different place. So we say, come where you are and start where you are. And, all of this does increase our distress. Many of us have fallen into routines that require us, as I said, to be educators, caregivers, workers, parents, and of course, Girl Scout volunteers. And it's what we as women are typically used to doing, except much more heightened at these days. Men and women do share many sources of stress that are the same: money, job security, health, and relationship issues. However, women usually take on many of these roles, and especially as caregivers and organizers. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but we do know that women do take on a lot of the society's stressors. And now, of course, we've added even more, and we have time pressure and unmet obligations. I actually took a PTO day last week because I was tired of seeing everyone got all these great things done during their time home. And I was like, I sit in front of a laptop all day. I need to organize something. And I did, and I felt better about that. And we may feel a sense of failure if we're seeing other people doing amazing things, and we're not meeting our own expectations. And of course, maybe our expectations are a little too high. We do spend more time meeting the needs of others and nurturing others, rather than thinking about our own needs, our own mindfulness, and our own wellness. And sometimes in periods of high stress, we might not even recognize what our needs are. This is a longer road than we originally expected. And really now is the time to take some steps and do all that we can to promote our emotional health. As a Girl Scout community of volunteers and leaders, it is vital that we come together, support each other, and support our needs. We are always there for each other. That's the great thing about Girl Scouting. It's that sisterhood and that camaraderie. We know that the current stressors are leading people to feel disconnected. Not only are we socially distant, we're physically distant, we're isolated with the same people over and over and over again, which may be aggravating. And we know that our volunteers, the recent Pulse survey that was done across the nation, there's a dichotomy. Many of our volunteers are feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling anxious, but they're also feeling grateful because they're well, they have their health, they have others to take care of, and they are able to do so. And we know that 89% of our volunteers have children home, 59% are working from home, 35% are concerned or have already had a reduction of income, and 25% have a loss of income. So there's a lot of things happening in addition to the things that usually help us be a little bit anxious or frustrated or depressed even. So today we're very fortunate to have with us Gabriela Celeiro. She is a licensed clinical social worker at Atlantic Health, and she's going to discuss with us mindfulness and wellness strategies to help us cope with the stress we're facing. Studies suggest that mindfulness practices may help people manage stress, cope better with serious illness, and reduce anxiety and depression. And I know we can all use a little bit more of that right now. So welcome, Gabriela. And why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself and fill us in on how you can help us today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and for all of you that were able to take the time to be here. It's so important for us to just prioritize our self-care and community in times like this. So primarily I work with survivors of trauma, specifically sexual trauma. And in that work, I actually learned a lot about the impact of mindfulness, stress reduction from the point of view of just tuning into your body and really looking at modalities that can help in the moments, whether you're dealing with PTSD, regular anxiety, or even our work-life balance. And so I kind of dedicated my career to that, just in terms of my work with survivors of human trafficking and now survivors of sexual assault with Morris Cares at Atlantic Health System. I primarily work there as a bilingual behavioral health clinician. And I've done work internationally as well in Mexico, Puerto Rico, and pride sort of learning these little techniques that we can incorporate in our day-to-day life, especially with helping professionals. That's one of my passions. So that you can bring it not just for yourself, for your family, but also for the people that you're coming into contact with. So I really hope that today you're able to take a little skill, something to put in your toolkit, and to just be inspired to try something new. So thank you for having me.
Okay. So Gabriela, you ready for your PowerPoint? Should I get that?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Okay, so we are going to talk about stress management and self-care and the way that this can impact our day-to-day life, but also really simple things that you can do with yourself and with your family to incorporate that into your work-life balance, and now including our, third shift of taking care of others, and also those of you that are doing schoolwork with your children at home. Next slide. So the overview is that we're going to talk about the definition of stress, the impact of stress, right? Thinking of the components of it impacting us physically and emotionally, how to reduce it, self-care techniques, and how to include mindfulness. We're also going to look at some slides around mental health 101, especially for you that have adolescents at home, or even when you're working with the Girl Scouts, just things that you should know or be aware of. And then there's a ton of resources that I'm providing for you, some handouts as well that we'll go over, and then helplines and our contact information. Next slide. So this is a quote by Brene Brown, and those of you that have not tuned into her work, she is an amazing PhD social worker that's done a lot of work around bravery and vulnerability. And she talks a lot about us really being the man in the arena, and this concept of showing up, not criticizing ourselves for what we didn't do perfectly, but really giving ourselves that, accolade for saying, you know what, at least I showed up at the race. So sometimes the bravest and most important thing you can do is to show up. She has a wonderful TED Talks, wonderful books. So if you've never used her as a resource for inspiration, I really do recommend her. Next slide. And so very quick here as our Zoom group, I want you to think, so from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, right? How stressed are you right now in this moment? So just tune into that. If you have access to the chat, you can chat it. If not, just internally say it to yourself. Okay, next slide. So what is stress? Stress is a psychological and physical response of the body. This occurs whenever we have to adapt to changing conditions, as we have to do very quickly right now with COVID-19. As Betty was saying, we were not anticipating being in week 7, and also the impact that this would have on our everyday life, right? And how it's changed us really globally and in our community, and especially where we are sort of as the epicenter in our nation. So these conditions can be perceived as both negative or positive, right? We also want to note that there's two types. So eustress, which is considered good stress, and then distress, which is not so good because it can impact our body in a negative way. Next slide. So with eustress, it motivates us into action, right? So it's this thing of all of a sudden, maybe you have things that you need to get done that day. There's that presentation, there is doing laundry because, you know, the kids are out of socks. There is maybe making sure that your parents have their groceries or their medication. And there's things that you kind of have to get done very quickly. And sometimes our body will get in gear and really pump up and say, okay, I'm going to really focus on that presentation, knock it out of the water so I feel good, and then I can tackle these other things, right? Another way to think about that is, let's say that you run a marathon, for those of you that do that, right? And so you kind of have that adrenaline pumping, you are getting ready, and it sort of feels good in the moment, right? It motivates us. So this can help employees be actually more productive. And also the Journal of Business and Management study talks about how this can be related to positive, right? Positive performance. So this is sort of that juicy stuff that gets us going. Next slide. So de-stress, so this is the negative stress, right? And another way for us to even perceive that is, let's say that you're feeling anxious. Let's say that there was something, you know, traumatic that happened. For instance, any of you that have found out that somebody, you know, passed away or got sick with COVID and you're scared, or you were in an environment where you possibly could have gotten yourself. You can go into that state of, you know, fight, flight, or freeze really quickly. And this stress would also start pumping a lot of different, you know, adrenaline and things into our body that can get us to feel on alert. And so when that happens for a very long time, it actually impacts us in a negative way, right? This type of stress reduces the performance of the employee. It reduces the level of motivation, and it can feel as if you're being attacked, both physically or emotionally. And when we talk about mental health, I can give you a little bit more examples around how anxiety can manifest in the body. So it's very similar to that. Next slide. So this is a video that you can watch on your own. It's actually kind of funny, but it is based on research. And this is something that you can also show adolescents, maybe even tweens. And it talks about stress tips. So how to relieve stress, what are simple things that you can do, like making art, going for a walk, and things that you can do in everyday life. So it's a very practical video. Next slide. Okay. So what are your triggers? So this is taken from some research that was done in 2017 by the American Psychological Association. And it talks about the sources of stress in America. So currently, 63% of people are worried about the future of our nation. 62% are worried about money or finances, and this is obviously particularly delicate right now during COVID-19. 61% are worried about work, 57% about the current political climate, and then 51% about violence and crime. And obviously this impacts where you live, what kind of environment, what kind of county. And so self-awareness is key. You will have access to a self-assessment little template that you can do. And as you do that, be honest. The results are for you only. You don't have to show it to anybody else unless you have somebody that you feel really safe with, that you would like to explore that with, or even a motivational buddy that you can say, you know what, I realized that I am not prioritizing taking time at the end of my workday to transition into the things that I need to do at home. And I want you to remind me to have a snack or change my clothes or put on some music that I enjoy, you know, anything that can kind of shift you from that first shift to the second. And also, what are you stressed about? You know, can you pinpoint what that is? Is it something that is realistic that maybe you can tackle in that moment, or even journal or put a little note for yourself so that you can address it? Or is it more of a global macro level, you know, stress and worry that you're feeling from the, you know, environment? And that's also okay, but at least you're addressing it. And what is your self-talk about stress? You know, I know for myself, for instance, when I talk to some of the survivors that I work with, or even the clients that I work with in my private practice, they'll say, you know, I'm worried, but I'm not sure why. I can kind of feel the anxiety in my body. I wake up, my palms are sweaty, you know, I don't really want to eat, but I'm not sure why. And then when they're able to really look at what that is, right? What is that anxiety, that stress trigger? We can sort of shed light into it and address it a little bit better. It doesn't feel so big and so unknown. Next slide. And so this is very important. And, you know, I love the way that Betty kind of introduced this concept. And even as we were, you know, planning this presentation and us just talking about what does this mean for women, especially right now, right? And so it is this area of work. Many of you are working from home or even having to go in as first responders. So it is that stress of commuting and making sure that, you know, you have your computer set up at home, that your Wi-Fi is working, you know, while maybe your children are on it as well for their schoolwork, really performing, you know, even if you have distractions in the home, you're still expected to deliver. And then home, right? What is this sort of concept? There is a theory, and it's around the second shift for women. And it's stating that once work is completed, then you're going home, or often staying home, and transitioning into making sure that there's dinner on the table, making sure that, you know, the laundry is done, making sure that, you know, the things that everybody in the family needs for the next day are ready, maybe even walking the dogs, you know. And so on top of that, it can sort of be compressed with the emotional stress, right? What is the emotional stress of fearing that your children could get sick, that you could get sick, that your parents could get sick, that when you're at work in your environment, you know, are you coming into contact? And what that means, right? What that means about our loved ones. And then also the social demands. And so Betty and I were talking about this concept of now the third shift, right? During COVID-19, post-COVID-19 as well, of not only are you now doing your work, making sure that the children are taken care of, the household, but you're also helping them with their schoolwork. You're now performing the duty of an educator as well. Maybe you have to take care of parents that are ill, or somebody in your community, right? And so it's this role of caregiver, school teacher, parent, provider, worker, employee, right? Woman, all of these concepts at the same time. And so really acknowledging that and what that means. Next slide.
Gabby, can I just jump in for 1 second? There's a little bit of background noise, and I think there's someone calling in from a telephone that is not muted. Everyone that's calling in from a computer or an iPad, we are able to mute, but we cannot mute that one. So if you're calling in and you're not muted, just mute yourself. It's almost like paper shuffling. So sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I understand. There's that distraction, right? So these are fun ways to reduce stress. And one of the things that I want to really, you know, remind you of, or pun intended, stress for today, is that it can be something very simple. And these are things that are unique to all of us. Okay. Not everybody is going to be able to sit in meditation position and tune out all of their thoughts and, you know, breathe for 3 hours. That's not possible for everybody. And so really utilizing the things that you know work for you. You know, if you like to laugh and humor is something that really gets you out of that state of worry, put on a silly movie. Watch a comedian. Watch cartoons that you used to love, you know, as a child. Find fun memes. I mean, we have so much access now to this via, YouTube and Instagram and all of these other social media modalities that we don't just have to use for, you know, news and kind of heavy content. We can also use it for humor. Disconnect, really take time to turn off the electronics, sit in bed, read a book, do things, do a puzzle with your family, color with your kids, color, you know, with yourself while you're doing other things, anything that you can do to disconnect and to give a little bit of rest to your eyes, right? We get a lot of screen time, which has been known to stress the eyes in terms of the light. Identify a connect with a buddy, right? Is there a friend that you know is doing something that inspired you and you'd like to do it as well? Maybe even do a FaceTime or a Zoom share video where they can teach you that arts and craft that they made, or that recipe, or, you know, vent a little bit about how your day is going. Just identify that. You can even meet your children, you know, your buddy, that you say, hey, can we go for a walk at 5 o'clock every day together, or walk the dog together and see how many trees we can find? Can we, you know, do a little bit of coloring together or a puzzle every night? Just something that's a little different. Video games. Kids love video games. Finding something fun on your phone that you can do together. It can be silly. You time, whether this means taking a bath, whether it means, you know, putting on a mask in your face, putting a hair treatment in now that we all don't have to see each other, anything that you can do very quickly for yourself, you know, making a delicious latte, making yourself an herbal tea, just something that feels comfortable. Take care of all parts of you. And I know this sounds very cliche, but really trying to shower, trying to, you know, put something that makes you feel good about yourself and comfortable, you know, taking care of that, your emotional self, your physical health, anything that you can kind of do to monitor that and balance. Animals are great. You know, they're silly. They can force you to go outside. You can play fetch, play games, anything that you can do to try to tune into your pets at home as well. Go outside if you're able to, and be creative. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide. Okay. So I love this picture, right? The mask and don't panic, and this concept of what does it mean for us to really prioritize ourselves, right? Alex this is one of the main points that I think he really wanted to make with making this presentation available to you all, is that if we are not able to breathe, if we are not taking care of ourselves, we cannot take care of others. We can't take care of our children. We can't take care of our partners, our pets, even, you know, at work, employees, even the people that we care for. And this is hard, you know, it's hard to remember. I know for myself, especially when I'm doing crisis response or I'm on call for our hotline or something, I'm like, okay, that's my priority. You know, but if we are not okay, if we are not tuning into ourselves, then we're not able to really give our best self to others, right? It's this concept of now our glasses half empty, and then we're pouring from that cup, right? So we're pouring from an empty cup, and people feel that. They feel the annoyance, they feel the stress, right? So we want to really model that self-care for us, because that also inspires the people around you. So it is really a service to everyone around you to take care of yourself first, and remembering that you deserve it, right? That is so important. You deserve it. You're all women doing so many things, and that is the number one priority is you. Next slide. And so this is a self-care wheel. This is from olgaphoenix.com, and it breaks up physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional, right? And what is the self-care concepts that we can look at? And so, you know, it can be anything from making sure that we're eating healthy when we're able to, going into nature, meditating if you can, journaling, you know, just journaling how you're feeling in the moment, Professionals setting boundaries, right? If you feel very comfortable that after 5 o'clock you have to tune now into your family, kind of setting that boundary for yourself so that you don't feel depleted. So I suggest that you look into this life self-care wheel. You know, it really incorporates balance, and see if there's anything in there that works for you. And there's also resources as well. Next slide. So mindfulness teaches us to focus our awareness on our feelings, on the tone of our experience. Mindful self-compassion teaches us to notice and focus on our feelings, but then gives us a practice to shift those feelings. So this is from mindful.org, which also has wonderful handouts and resources. So mindfulness is really about tuning into what you are doing in the moment, which is different from meditation, right? In meditation, the focus is to kind of make your mind go clear and just sort of tune everything out. Mindfulness is saying, tune in, focus on what you're doing, but be very strategic about what that looks like. Next slide. And so these are some mindfulness exercises that can be easy to incorporate, you know, some obviously more than others, but things that have really been researched and looked at in terms of being helpful for work-life balance and incorporating self-care. So focusing on your breath. This sounds very simple. However, most of us are breathing right into sort of our mid-chest area. We are not breathing into our core. So if you put your hands on your belly and you breathe in, you should really feel the air filling your belly. You should feel it going all the way down, right? And you can explore with that. You can breathe in deeply, release it really slowly. You can try to breathe in to sort of the top, the middle, and then down. And notice how, if you've had a really stressful day, okay, or you got off the phone with a phone call, let's say with your boss or, you know, a family member that stresses you out. Notice what you do in that moment. Usually we kind of take a deep breath, right? We're like, right? We naturally are tuning into that system, to our lungs. So really focusing on that. It can be really quickly. It can be, you know, 3 breaths. I love to use aromatherapy because it reminds me that I am breathing deeply, and you can use scents that you like as long as you're not allergic, but lavender is very calming. Peppermint can relieve headaches and can be uplifting. Citrus can also really, you know, engage you and feeling a little bit more alert because it's that reminder of, like, you know, citrus fruit. And so anything that you can do to breathe in. Mindful walking. If you're going out for walks, I know I certainly am right now with, you know, my dogs, just feeling your feet on the ground, not being on your phone, not being distracted, but really focusing on walking, looking around, you know, what is the nature around you? What can you see? What can you smell? Focusing on your senses. Mindful eating. So when you're eating a fruit, taking the time to peel that fruit, sit there and enjoy it. Take time to sit down and eat your meals. So many of us rush and eat very quickly or in front of our computers, but when you can, focusing on that. Body scans, there's a lot of access to this on YouTube actually, but it's really focusing on relaxing. So you would, let's say, tighten your brow really, really tight and release. Tighten your jaw and release. Tighten your hands and release. And like so, you go down your body. Another way to do this would be with yoga nidra, which is the yoga of sleep. And there are actually a lot of videos around that you can put at night before you go to bed. And that gives you that progressive body relaxation. Mindful stretching. So it doesn't have to be vinyasa flow yoga, right? Or hot yoga. It can be just stretching. Stretching, you know, even if you're in a meeting and you're not on the video, and just taking the time to, you know, turn on in your chair, left to right, maybe grabbing your elbow, anything that you can do to feel good in that moment. So as you're stretching, Tai Chi and Qigong it's a form of Chinese medicine. And if any of you have had the opportunity to go to Chinatown in New York City, you will see elderly people doing this together every morning. It is a practice. It is very easy. There's a lot of simple steps that you can do. So it's different from yoga because it's not as strenuous, but it is still a really nice practice to focus on calming the body. Of course, meditation, any kind of movement, whether it's putting on a silly song, you know, having a mini dance party with your kids, but getting into your body. Journaling, mindful cooking, right? Learning a new recipe, maybe baking something you've never baked. Really focusing on cutting, on being present as you're making the meal, smelling the herbs as you're adding them. So focusing on that, not just to get it out to your family, but for the joy and the beauty of making that food for yourself. Body work, so self-massage. If you look at a lot of the Ayurvedic practices, they talk about, you know, using sesame oils to do self-massages. Obviously, when we're back into the real world, if you are able to get massages, this is really helpful for your lymphatic system and to relieve stress, to get, you know, circulation back into your body. And visualizations, positive affirmations, and this can be, you know, really silly. And I know when I do it with my clients, you know, sometimes they find it a little cheesy, but it's so important to just remember, you know, I am resilient. I am strong. I am lovable. I mean, these are core beliefs that are so helpful for us as women to remember, right? And so really tuning into that, you can put them on your mirror, you can put them on your desk, but anything that you can do that's going to help you to remind yourself of that, you know, positivity. Next slide. So this is an app that is for self-care. It's called My Strength. And as far as I know, it is free, and it gives you the opportunity to look at tips for your self-care, but also ways to monitor your mental health. So try that. It has a lot of good reviews and a lot of different options to use the app. Next slide. And so remember that this is about self-discovery, self-awareness, honesty, exploration, and this is about you, right? And so it's anything that you can incorporate into your life, be it simple, you know, waking up and having warm water with lemon to get your intestines working, to, you know, detox a little bit, anything, going for a walk, you know, but just something simple that you can explore. Next slide. And so self-care, it's about looking at anything that you can incorporate. It's about making time for yourself. You are important. There is a wonderful book called The Trauma Stewardship, which looks at helping professionals and the way that they can really tune into their self-care and their work-life balance, and just taking a little bit of time for yourself, whether it's, you know, 5, 15, half an hour, anything that you can do. Next slide. And so this is Mental Health 101, and we wanted to show you a little bit of the warning signs, right? So when we're thinking about stress, this is one part of it. The next part, which can happen sometimes, right? Whether we have a pre-existing condition or a chemical imbalance, or our cup is so empty that we have now gone beyond, you know, that sort of de-stress, and it's becoming panic attacks or anxiety or, you know, worse. So really feeling very sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks, trying to harm or end one's life or making plans to do so, severe or out of control risk-taking, excessive use of alcohol and drugs. So anything that appears to be really out of balance, right? So extreme difficulty concentrating or sitting still. These would all be warning signs. Next slide. So this is the prevalence in America, and 19% of people have reported having anxiety disorders. adults mainly. It breaks down, you know, sort of the ethnicities, but 1 in 25 adults in America experience serious mental illness. 17% of youth, 6 to 17 years old, experience mental illness. And so it is very common, right? And there is the prevalence of it where people feel scared, right? If they have to see a psychiatrist and take medication, or see a therapist or a counselor or some kind of helping professional, but nobody should have to suffer. And the way that you can think about this is, you know, if you had high blood pressure, or you had a thyroid issue or diabetes and you needed to get help, you would have to do that, right? Mental illness can be this silent wound that we don't see, right? It's just underneath. And so because it isn't visible to people, sometimes we don't get help. And so normalizing that for yourself, you know, for the Girl Scouts, for your family, knowing that if you need help, you can ask for it. Next slide. And so at Atlantic Health, we have a zero suicide, you know, policy, meaning that we do everything we can to help our patients, our clients, our survivors to know that this is not the answer, right? Suicide is not the answer. And those of you that have teenagers at home or work with them know that the prevalence among adolescents is very high. In my work working with teenagers, this has definitely been something that I've been very conscious of. And so talking about it, right? It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm overwhelmed. You know, this feels uncomfortable. We're in a pandemic. I don't know what's happening. I know some teenagers are scared, right? Am I graduating school? Am I not? Will I have jobs? What does it mean to be isolated as an adolescent at this time? And so really having, you know, not only understanding the risk and being able to talk about it, but having the resources. Next slide. So these are the website links, which you will get in the PowerPoint that gives you more information about, you know, taking care of others. It gives you information about adolescents' mental health, mindfulness resources, and exercises. And then next slide. Here you have helplines. So the NAMI helpline, the New Jersey Hope Line. There is also the Trevor Lifeline, which is for suicide prevention, mom to mom. So all of these are available for you if you are in crisis, or if you need support, or you know somebody then is that you can use. Next slide. So this is our contact information. Lori is our executive director at Atlantic Behavioral Health, and then that is my information as well. So thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions.
Yes, so thank you so much, Gabby. That was very thorough and informative, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us. That we know that one of the things that we are always concerned about is the emotional and mental health of our girls, but also our volunteers and our family members, especially now. So if anyone has any questions, yes, please put them in the chat. The first question is, will the slides be available? Yes, Judy Ginty will be sharing them with you when this is over, along with some other resources that Gabby is providing to all of you. But if you have any questions, I know the last time, Gabby, there's a lot of concern about helping our girls, especially those who are in seniors in high school and are experiencing a lot of disappointment, you know, canceling senior trips and proms and in-person graduation and spring concerts and plays and everything that goes with being a senior. And obviously we're talking right now about the emotional well-being of our volunteers so that we can be there for our girls. But also, how would you help our volunteers who are dealing with, you know, 5th graders, 8th graders, 12th graders, college seniors, who this impact is a little even more significant because of all that they're missing?
Right. It's difficult. And, you know, when you were speaking, I thought of the saying that a lot of people kind of talk about, this too shall pass, right? So thinking of things are going to change, or going to shift. But I find that being really present with what is coming up for them in the moment. You know, I miss my prom. What does that mean? I'm not going to have that experience, you know. Maybe even telling them what the experience was like for you, or different ways that, you know, this can be for people in other parts of the world even, right? But really normalizing the feelings that are coming up for them. I think sometimes we want to make things better and we want to give them solutions right away, but even just listening and let them be with that sadness, because we are experiencing, in a way, the stages of grief, right? It's sort of like that denial, and then maybe some people feel angry, especially teenagers, and then the acceptance of, wow, my senior year is going to look very different. And really advocating for them as well. Are there ways that the schools can say, you know what, we didn't have prom now, but a year from now, we're going to have prom for you guys, or, you know, in a couple of months. Just things that can kind of encourage them to think outside of the box and be creative. But I would say normalizing their feelings and being present with their emotions. It's okay to not be okay right now.
Right. Another question was also about milestone birthdays during quarantine. I actually know my neighbor turned 21 during this time, and it was not what she expected. She held up a little sign that said, "I'm home with my parents. Happy birthday to me." You know, and she had a seltzer. But, you know, I think I've lost, oh no, I still see you, Gabriella. I just saw something different. So any other, you know, especially for younger children, you know, when they're turning 10 or they're 13, or they're missing, you know, even turning 7 and missing being with their friends, you know, anything that you could suggest to help, you know, as you said, acknowledge the disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, letting them have the emotions that they need to, right? It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. So tuning into that emotion, but getting creative, decorate the house. Have little mini Zoom parties for them if you can with the other parents, you know, give them a color that they can all wear, or create little games. You know, I had one for a 3-year-old a couple weeks ago, and it was, you know, everybody wear red because she loved Elmo. And then we had little silly activities of get your silliest hat, put it on, grab one of your pets, you know, draw a happy face right now and everybody show it. So different things that you can do to still make them feel that sense of community, but even just asking them, you know, for today, what do you want to do? I want to play games with mommy and daddy. I want to sit on the floor. I want to wear my princess outfit. I want to, you know, put costumes on the pets, just anything that you can do. And for teenagers, you know, stressing this concept of self-care. I mean, what is it that you need? Do you want to, you know, have the bathroom to yourself today for a couple of, you know, hours to take a bath, if you have access to an extra bathroom? Or why don't we redecorate your room so it feels like you have a different space? Or why don't we plan the next trip that you're going to take with your friends when this is done? So having a plan of what is after, right? We're not going to stay in this place forever, but what can we have them think about in terms of inspiration?
Thanks. And I know one of our volunteers, Linda, was saying that they've been doing birthday drive-bys with family, friends, and the police. That's not allowed in my town, but I have seen a lot of it on Facebook, and it's been great. And also people have, one of my neighbors put up a sign that said honk for, you know, so-and-so's birthday, and anybody that drove by just honked. And she posted later that, you know, every time somebody honked, he was so excited. So I think it is, you know, kids are resilient, and that's one of the great things we talk about in Girl Scouts is that resilience, that grit, that character. But this is, and some of our children are happy. You know, our children that have issues in school, some of them are happy to be home. Some of them are not dealing with lunchroom drama or, you know, classroom bullies. So I think we also have to acknowledge when they go back, you know, what will that look like? Because our children are becoming, some of them are becoming comfortable where they are.
Right. And even, you know, a silly talent show, or, you know, something that they created, or for the Girl Scouts, if they have access to a garden, coming up with a little project that they can all do together, you know, things in that way that are still utilizing what you have at home and any access that you have to being creative, but something that can feel like a sense of community.
Any other questions or just comments or things that you've been seeing or doing to help yourself with wellness and mindfulness? A lot of Netflix people. You know, I know it's, you know, and thank you, Gabby. I know that everybody is in a place that, you know, no one has ever planned for. I mean, disasters have happened before, and trauma, and we deal with it, and it affects us emotionally. But we know when the end is, or when the date was, and this is very different in the fact that there's such a it's just prolonged, you know, and we just don't know when it will be over. But if there's never anything else, any comments or questions, we usually
Betty?
have. Yes.
Can I just ask everybody, I know you're interested in getting Gabby's PowerPoint. I see a lot of first names, I don't have your last name. If you sending your email address to customercare@GSNNJ, and I will definitely send you the PowerPoint from Gabby.
All right. Thanks, Judy.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
because this was an open Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So customercare@gsnnj.org, and Gabby has really great resources to share, and you can share with, you know, other volunteers, other family members, any other groups that you're in. We appreciate so much the support of Atlantic Health and providing Gabby to us. And let me see, I have a good comment here that life is not canceled, which is very true, Linda. Yeah. And so we should teach our girls and our family members that this is adversity, and we need to get creative and work around it. And, you know, when there's a roadblock, we figure out a detour. And I think it's important to encourage them not to get discouraged. But I agree, Gabby, that sometimes, you know, we do have to, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to, you know. Yeah. Sometimes we do have to say, hey, this stinks, and acknowledge that it does. If you miss something, you know, a big trip or a small thing, it doesn't matter. It's painful, and acknowledging that pain helps to alleviate the distress, because it's real.
Yep. And there's a wonderful grief book. It's called It's Okay to Not Be Okay. I love the title because it really looks at where we are now, honoring that space, and going from that, right? Just being genuine with ourselves and our emotions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we know, I mean, and we all live in different places and have been impacted in different ways. And as I say, you start where you are. You know, some people have had a lot of trauma imposed, whether they've had ill family members, you know, family members who've passed away, or people have lost their jobs and it's changed their lifestyle, or they have parents continuing to go out to work and they're worried for their safety. So there's a lot of trauma, and recognizing that and dealing with it is the best way we can help each other, you know, as adults, but also our girls. And I know we had one good comment that I do want to shout out from Kim, that her children are sending notes to family members and they are enjoying receiving the mail. So mail is, you know, something our kids aren't really used to. So,
and it's so fun. Yeah.
Yes. And Girl Scouts of the USA has a national letter writing campaign. So we were saying it's also an English lesson to learn how, so you can incorporate it into your kids' curriculum. And one of the volunteers who had mentioned that she sent a letter to all her girls in her troop telling them how much she missed them. So that sisterhood and that camaraderie lives through. Any last comments? All right, Gabby, a lot of chat information saying thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your techniques and talents with us. That's the great thing about this amazing sisterhood, is that we get to learn from each other. And we really appreciate your time, and everyone that dialed in and called in and I can see you or not see you. Thank you. Our wish for all of you is to stay well, be healthy, both physically and emotionally, and to know, as Gabby said, this too pass, and we will all be here for each other when it does. So Gabby, thank you so much. And thank you, and be well, everyone. Take care.